My name is Daniel Reeve. I'm 58 years old, a semi-retired architect, and up until that spring afternoon, I believed I had done enough to earn peace in my final chapter. I'd weathered the breakdown of a 24-year marriage with quiet dignity, raised a daughter who once clung to my hand at every school recital, and rebuilt a life with a woman who made me feel seen again. That day was supposed to be my second beginning. If you've ever done everything right, only to have someone you love rewrite the truth against you, then you'll feel this one. Like, comment, and share the story if it struck a nerve. Shout out to Henry_Barnes52. Your words last week reminded me why I write these. Drop your name below for a chance to be mentioned in the next story. Margaret and I had chosen St. Andrew's Chapel for its simplicity. Cream stone walls, stained glass filtered by late spring sun, soft chamber music filling the air. She looked radiant, nervous but certain. We both were. We'd invited fewer than 50 people, close friends, family, a few of Margaret's colleagues from the university. Maya had RSVP'd no. She said she was busy with work. I didn't push. I never pushed her. So when the doors opened in the middle of my vows, I didn't expect to see her standing there. Maya, black dress, no emotion on her face. "This man can't marry anyone else," she said. "He divorced my mom wrongfully and has left me with nothing." Every sound in that chapel stopped. The musicians, the shifting of feet, even the wind beyond the windows. I stood there, holding the ring, staring at the girl I once carried on my shoulders through rainstorms, now dismantling my future in front of everyone I loved. I hadn't wronged her. I'd paid for everything since the divorce: rent, phone, university, health insurance. I had records, but none of that mattered in that moment. Because truth doesn't shout. Lies do. And I could already hear Lorraine's voice behind her eyes. After the wedding collapsed, I didn't go home. I booked a room at a quiet bed and breakfast just outside the city. Margaret needed space. Not from me, but from a humiliation. She was angry, but not at me. She knew there was more to this than Maya's outburst. That night, I opened my laptop and pulled up every transaction from the last 3 years. Rent transfers, utility payments, phone bills, tuition deposits, monthly allowances, all paid, all on time, all documented. The idea that Maya was destitute or even neglected was fiction, but fiction, I learned, has a ghostwriter. I started with her bank. She was still on the family plan, still using the shared mobile provider. I requested access logs. As a co-signer, I had that right. A few days later, the report came back. It showed Maya forwarding nearly every deposit I made directly to a second account. One I didn't recognize. I dug further. That account was under Lorraine's name. So that's how she'd done it. Maya wasn't broke. She was being siphoned, manipulated, mentally and emotionally, it seemed. She lived in a flat I paid for, but claimed she couldn't afford groceries. Her mother had orchestrated the lie, slowly, cleverly. Bitterness masked as need. Pity dressed as parental truth. I reached out to Maya. Calmly. "No, I'm good." She didn't reply. Margaret and I talked, often late into the night. She wasn't just hurt. She was bewildered. Why would your daughter do that to you? In front of everyone. I didn't have an answer then. But I was starting to understand something that took me nearly 6 decades to learn. Sometimes love turns to leverage in the wrong hands. The betrayal wasn't just that Maya interrupted the wedding. It was that she weaponized our history and believed the lies more than the man who raised her. So I made a decision. I would not chase her. I would not explain myself again. But I would reclaim my future. And this time, no one would hijack it. I didn't rush to replan the wedding. Margaret and I took a breath. A long one. We traveled, not far, just to the coast. Rented a cottage with creaking floorboards and waves that sounded like forgiveness. We talked about everything. Not just what happened, but what we wanted life to look like going forward. And I made a quiet vow. No more paying for disrespect. The first thing I did when we got back was revise the financial structure I'd let carry on too long. I canceled the rent auto-pay, shut off the phone account. Maya would get 1 month's notice, then the cord was cut. No warning, no fight, This wasn't revenge. It was clarity. I'd always told myself I was being a good father, paying her way, never asking questions. But good fathers don't enable lies. They don't fund manipulation. They draw lines that teach, not just protect. I also wrote a letter. Just one page. No guilt. No anger. Maya, I've loved you with everything I had. That hasn't changed. But I won't finance a version of you I don't recognize. You have chosen your mother's narrative, and that is your right. But I have the same right to choose peace. I didn't send it. Not yet. But writing it helped me draw a boundary in ink before I drew in action. Meanwhile, Margaret quietly started planning again. This time, she called in favors, old students, retired colleagues, even a few folks from the chapel who were there the day it fell apart. People wanted to help, not out of pity, but out of respect. They'd seen Grace under fire. They wanted to see it win. And so we started again. New date, new venue. This time, there'd be security at the doors. And a guest list? Much shorter. We married on a Sunday in late June. Not in a chapel this time, but outdoors, under a grove of white oaks on a friend's private property. Margaret wore a soft blue gown that moved with the breeze, and I chose a charcoal suit. No tie. No vows written the night before. No string quartet. Just the hush of leaves, the hum of cicadas, and the right people in the right seats. Security was discreet, but present. 2 plainclothes men at the perimeter. Not because we feared Maya would return. She hadn't spoken a word since that day. But because this time, I wasn't going to be caught unprepared. Margaret walked toward me barefoot, smiling. This time, there were no interruptions. No acquiescence. No boasts. We said our vows slowly. Clearly, I promised her presence, not just provision. She promised laughter, even on the hard days. And when I kissed her, it felt like the moment wasn't fighting for air. It was finally breathing. Afterward, people told us they'd never seen a wedding so still, so unperformed. Maybe that's what happens when you lose the pageantry and keep only the love. I noticed one chair near the back that remained empty the entire time. I hadn't invited Maya. Some said I should have. I should have left a door open. But sometimes, doors aren't meant to be reopened, especially when they lead to rooms where you're expected to apologize for things you didn't do. Lorraine sent a message weeks later, a vague, passive-aggressive note about losing influence over our daughter. I didn't reply. I owed her nothing. Not anymore. I spent decades giving pieces of myself to people who only noticed what I hadn't given. This time, I gave to someone who saw everything, even the parts of me that were still healing. And for the first time in years, I wasn't waiting for the other shoe to drop. I was standing still, with both feet planted, in a life that finally felt like mine. It's been 10 months since the wedding. Margaret and I live a quiet life now. Morning walks, shared coffee, occasional road trips. She's taken up painting again. I've started a part-time design mentorship for young architects who've been through hardship. We don't talk much about what happened unless someone asks. And even then, only in passing. I never heard from Maya again. Not after the wedding. Not after the letter I finally mailed her. The one that said I loved her, but would no longer fund her silence or her mother's narratives. I didn't expect a reply, and I didn't need one. I no longer feel the ache of waiting, because something happens when you stop mistaking access for love. You stop bleeding into people who never bring bandages. I adjusted my will this past December. Margaret, of course, is the primary beneficiary. A portion goes to a scholarship fund in my mother's name, and the rest, the part one used to set aside for Maya's future, will now fund housing grants for single fathers rebuilding after divorce. Maybe someday she'll hear about it. Maybe not. But I've come to understand that legacy isn't about who shares your name. It's about who honors your time. I gave Maya years, decades. I gave her the father she needed, even when I wasn't sure who I was anymore. But the day she stood in that chapel and turned truth into spectacle, that was the day I saw the line between fatherhood and performance. And I stepped off the stage. Now I live in a house where love is quiet but honest, where no one raises their voice to be right, where the only thing louder than the silence is the peace. If you felt this story deep in your chest, share it. Someone out there needs to hear it. Thank you for walking through Daniel's story, for listening to the quiet parts. See you in the next one. No shout-outs this time, just gratitude.